So the last two have been talking about sort of mainly cocaine, and obviously Laura's just brought us nicely onto crack cocaine, because that's what I'm going to be covering today. I'm going to specifically talk about a proposed project that we're working on in Aberdeen. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the kind of harm reduction sort of stuff, although I'll refer to it because I think both Laura's have covered some of the kind of harms. You'll see from the title slide that we're looking at this in terms of the sort of feasibility crack filter distribution. I'll explain a little bit about the thinking of that in a minute. And obviously the idea of this project is to attract and engage. We've heard a few people, both speakers so far, talk about the importance of engagement as a kind of harm reduction tool. So up in Aberdeen, we've always had quite a big issue with crack cocaine. I think statistically it's been higher than the kind of national average. I was looking back, it must have been about the year 2000, 2001, I think Aberdeen or north east of Scotland accounted for 50% of the crack cocaine use in the whole of Scotland. And we've been seeing quite an increase recently as well. So recent figures I've got show that there was 385 people reporting crack use, of which 340 smoked, 45 injected, and we also had another 17 who said they snowballed. I suspect strongly that some of those that were injecting within that 45 were snowballing as well. But the other thing I'll say is, although there's 385 people we're hearing of using crack, that's only the ones we know about. And I think there's opportunities to be engaging with those people that we're not seeing in service as well. We're having quite a lot of our needle exchange users, for example, coming in and saying they've got lots of friends who are no longer needing to attend needle exchange because they moved from injecting to crack use. And we're wondering, where are these people and what kind of services and support are they accessing? We also know that there's quite a lot of health issues. I think Laura covered quite a lot of them. In fact, both Laura's covered some of the issues, health issues faced by crack users. And I was particularly glad to hear you reference the COPD, because I think that's a huge issue amongst what we're seeing is generally a kind of ageing population as well. I've also referenced the high rates of acquisitive crime. I suppose I'm partly thinking of this in terms of the wider public and hopefully attracting some funding for this proposal. I say that shamelessly. And so hopefully that will encourage people to kind of look at it as well in terms of it being a wider public and community project. Been looking at particular studies from Canada and France. There's quite a lot. I'm happy to send on the kind of details of these. And the studies have suggested that actually one approach to engaging is perhaps the distribution of equipment specifically to crack users. We're just giving an example here of what that might include. So, typical pipes or filters, as I'm going to be referring to them now, would need to have some sort of pipe, but also we need gauze usually to act as a kind of filter to filter out all the impurities. A lot of the people we know will obviously not use gauze, and there's particular harm reduction issues around that. I think Gareth may be speaking to that later. Okay, here comes the problematic part. Currently, it's not illegal to give out pipes because of the Misuse of Drugs Act, particularly Section 9A, lists what we are able to give out. I see this very much in similar terms as foil. So for ages, there was a big argument about why aren't harm reduction services able to give out foil, and that actually it would be a really good engagement tool as well as a harm reduction tool. And it took some time. Our agency was actually giving out foil for quite some time. We felt that it was necessary to do. But I think across Scotland we've seen a huge increase in people coming into services that weren't coming in previously, as well as the amount of foil packs being given out. So I think there's been a really kind of good provision. So we're kind of thinking that this might be a sort of similar thing we should be arguing for in terms of being able to kind of give out crack pipes as well. So obviously we need to look at the potential to kind of change the law, and I suppose there might be a few ways of doing this. I mean, obviously the Misuse of Drugs Act is a reserved matter, so in order to change that we would have to get consent from the UK government, or we could seek a comfort letter from the Lord Advocate of Scotland, which might be a more realistic way given all the other things that the UK government have on their plate. And the other thing that we were thinking about was, actually, do we just redefine what a crack pipe is, and could it be described as a filter? So I went and had a look at the dictionary, and I've been consulting with other colleagues. This wasn't my idea, by the way. There's colleagues in England, and specifically a chief constable, I believe, in somewhere in England. I haven't got permission to out them, but they were actually saying that, you know, to get around the law in some places, that actually all a crack pipe is essentially a filter to filter out the kind of particles. So obviously for a noun, it's the porous device for removing impurities or solid particles, no liquid or gas, or the bottom one as well. So there's potential there, we think, to be doing something. We've had discussions locally with the police. I mean, I think my discussion with the police with Fiona was there, and we're kind of saying, do you think we'd just be taking the piss? And they were actually, no, we don't. And they kind of got what we were saying, but obviously what they're saying is they would need instruction from somewhere else. So we were kind of thinking maybe local procurator, fiscal, but it may be that we kind of hold fire and go and, you know, and have maybe a more coordinated approach. If there were other areas to look at, maybe going for the Lord Advocate. So obviously in Canada they use Pyrex stems, and it's just, the gauze are compacted into the pipe, and that functions together as a crack filter. So I suppose just quickly, it is important to kind of point out that as well as it being a really good engagement tool, there are clear harm reduction benefits as well. So obviously the idea would be to get people in, we can then discuss about some of the other treatment options and get them involved in psychosocial. But there are, I think, immediate benefits as well. So using the gauze and being able to give it gauze as part of a filter would enable people to maybe stop using Brillo pads and all sorts of other things that we see people use, and then preventing them inhaling some of the particles that are bad for them. And also we see quite a lot of people using homemade devices, a couple of examples of which are here, and as well as the kind of the harm reduction stuff that Laura was explaining about, the inhalation of ammonia fumes, were also seeing people inhaling plastic fumes as well, and of course, because of the temperature at which crack burns, you've also got the potential for bits flaking off into the eye and all sorts of other things as well. So we think there's lots of good harm reduction things in addition to the engagement. There's probably slightly less evidence around the BBV risk, but nevertheless there's been one or two studies that have shown that there's the potential there for reducing some of the kind of risks around hepatitis C, HIV, etc. I've used this example as a metal pipe. It's actually a photograph of a pipe used by one of our clients who's moved away from crack use and was happy to donate it to us. And you can see on here that what they were using was just kind of steel wool. Again, if bits of that break off, there's risks around that. But also the metal, this person had talked about having lots of cracked lips. So if they were sharing that pipe, obviously there's BBV risks there potentially as well. But the evidence in that isn't as strong, so we'd have to kind of, I think that the main thing would be around the engagement aspect of it, and as well as some of the other harm reduction. We also think that can't find any that there's been any evaluated crack filter or crack pipe distribution. And I say evaluated because I do think this is an area where there's potential here within the UK to look at actually providing evidence. Quite often you look abroad and there's lots and lots of really good evidence. It would be really good if we could start doing some of that stuff and replicate that in Scotland. Why not? Why can't we start taking the lead in this a bit more as well? So, So, just a little bit on the proposed pilot project. I suppose what we want to do first of all is assess whether the distribution it works as an engagement tool. We also need, I suppose, to say that we don't know that it will be acceptable, so that clients may not like them. They may say, actually, we're not interested in that. We prefer using our own. There's all sorts of cultural things around, you know, people having their own kits. People sometimes come in and they open up a pencil case and they've got everything in there. So it might be that actually people wouldn't be an uptake. So we need to sort of start with that in mind as well. However, we would like to test that, and we would test that by operating the crack, giving the crack filters out through our current needle exchange, which we have set up, is well established. We also have quite a lot of contact with stimulant users. We used to have a specific service, funding was pulled from that, but we've managed to incorporate some of those people into our kind of mainstream services, so we would see them as a kind of a good group of people to approach and maybe help with some of the designs, etc. And we envisage, but happy to take sort of counsel on this from other people, that we would use a sort of combination of, data from sort of, client records, a kind of baseline sort of follow-up acceptability questionnaires within the kind of client records, and then do some semi-structured interviews and focus groups. So kind of a bit of a mixture, but we're happy to kind of have a discussion with potential researchers around this, because obviously we want to make this work as best as possible.